Hey there, welcome back and thanks for watching. You ever wonder if this and all the work that goes into heating with wood is really worth it financially, comfort-wise? Well, stick around. We're going to do a pretty detailed comparison, do some pros and cons, and I'm going to put some real long-term numbers comparing this wood heat to heat pump and heating with oil. All right, so it's time to jump right in. Here's the agenda. Anyone who knows me is laughing right now, saying, wow, this is very Ed-like to do things this way, but that's just how I am. We're going to answer the question up front, give you the pros and cons up front, and then we'll dig into the details, starting with sort of the caveats of my home equipment, so you have a basis for the numbers that I will present after that. Because obviously, if you're in a ginormous home and I'm in a small home, and the numbers are going to be very misaligned and maybe you not make much sense to you. So hopefully that'll help sort of frame it up. So yeah, we're going to break it down by dollars, gallons of oil used, cords of wood, all that stuff's gonna fall out of this presentation here. I will chapter the video to make it easy for navigation. So anyway, let's jump right in. Here is the pros and cons sheet. Yellow is good. Orange is bad. I will, jump through a couple of these. But just glancing at the sheet without even reading the text, you can kind of see that the cost and efficiency advantage goes to the heat pump, or at least in my area, goes to the heat pump, whereas the comfort feel advantage goes to oil and or wood. So just breaking it down a little bit, I'm going to run through just some of the highlights of what I think are key takeaways. Number one is each of these heating methods has its place. For example, the heat pump is really good in the fall and spring. It can bring the temp up a degree or two in October, no problem. March, April, no problem. Piece of cake, much easier than dealing with or paying for the oil or dealing with the wood stove. However, once you get into the really cold temps of winter, like below freezing, below 30-ish, the heat pump on its own runs a lot versus oil, which runs for 10 minutes, and then the baseboard radiant floor heaters, sort of continue to radiate even after the boiler's off. And then let's see, working down here, heat pump location, I think, is kind of a big deal. Our air handler is above the bedroom, and the outside unit is right outside the window. So we hear it when I'm sleeping. So I don't like that. So for me, that's one major advantage of the wood stove. The wood stove's on the other side of the house. I can run that. And then if it burns down about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and the heat pump kicks in, big deal. It's not the whole, it's better than the heat pump or the boiler, really, actually, which is under our bedroom, running all night. The boiler's a lot quieter, though, very quiet. One thing I do want to say, I don't have it highlighted here, but the heat pump, it blows hot air. A lot of people say, well, it blows cold air. The old ones definitely did. Mine, for example, blows 90-degree plus air when it's less than 25 degrees Fahrenheit outside. When it's warmer outside, I've had that thing on stage 2 running 104, 105-degree air that it's blown out, which is really, pretty good. However, obviously, it's blowing air through your house. So regardless of the temperature of the air, it's not going to feel as good as like the radiant heat you're getting off of the baseboards. The air filtering on the heat pump's actually really good. I've got the Murph 13 accordion. I would totally recommend that versus the little cheapo paper filters. Downside, back to the noise topic of the heat pump, is that it does run a defrost cycle periodically, and that's really annoying if it happens in the middle of the night because it takes a while, and I just don't like it happening in the middle of the night. And then, of course, really everything, heating source dries the air out in the winter, but the heat pump seems to do quite a bit more. So cost-wise, though, the heat pump was really worth it for us because we had to replace the AC only unit, and it was only $1,000 more. And then also cost wise, electric, at least price per kilowatt hour, is cheap. So, we really, it's hard to beat that, especially when compared, looking over here in the oil column, to oil as far as the maintenance plans being expensive, and then also as far as the price fluctuations, which you'll see in a moment. I have a table to show that. Wood's pretty cheap, especially obviously if you've got your own wood, or you can, get people to, give it to you. And then all you have to do maybe is split it. That's the way to go, really. I mean, that's really the takeaway. If you've got that source, and that, motivation to do the wood, it's totally worth it. I mean, it's just without a doubt. But, down to the efficiency and space part here, heat pumps clean, neat. It's just a button on the wall, turn it up, turn it down, piece of cake. Oil's a little bit different. You got copper pipes filled with water in the wall. You need a place to store a big oil tank. It's, not quite, as easy from that perspective. Wood, on the other hand, also is messy. You've got, I mean, even if you get someone to, supply your wood, you buy cord wood, it's still a messy thing. You got to have a place to store it inside and out, moving it around, handling it multiple times. Anyway, so that's sort of the overview of the pros and cons. But again, I want to reiterate, each of these heating methods has its place. So next up, just real quick, some home facts. You can pause the video and look at this, but this is just to frame it up as far as where my heating is and what my heating is. Oil radiant zones on each floor. Heat pump / AC only covers the main floor. The wood stove's in the basement, but it's a open split level. So of course, basement air does heat the upstairs pretty well, minus some bedroom areas that do get a little bit of a chill. Just because I don't have a good convection going on. I could fix that, but that's a whole nother story. So yeah, like install dates and things like that, brands. Electric, by the way, I've measured the output of the wood stove's blower, and it's really consuming a very small amount of electricity, so minimal impact on electricity. One fridge, one deep freeze. I've got LED lights everywhere, electric stove, electric, water heater, all that. So when you see the electric use numbers later, that are inclusive of all household electric use, not just heat pump use, this bullet will hopefully help, frame it up for you. And then also here real quick is just a picture of the equipment I have. I actually don't have a picture of the heat pump, but here's the model and efficiency ratings. And here you can see the ceiling vents. I cover them with these magnetic things. And if I get a stretch in the winter where I'm just not going to use the heat pump for, many days or a week or more, I know I'll cover them up. That prevents draft. That's one of the disadvantages of having your ducts run through the attic. Is, it's an unconditioned airspace, and, they leak a little bit. I guess newer homes are better, but, not the case for my home. So here's my wood stove, and to clarify, it's a wood stove insert. And then here's a picture, actually a dusty picture of the boiler before we actually moved here. It's a Burnham boiler, and, it's basically diesel fuel, heats a firebox in here that's like a vessel, and it heats the water, and the water here is one circulator, and there's another, and that water circulates through these baseboard radiant heaters, and heats the home. So that's kind of how that system works. So let's talk a little bit more about the oil. So heating oil is not cheap. And the prices are all over the map, from almost $5 a gallon down to $1.75 at one point during this period of measurement. So that's pretty volatile, and we all know that, right? Everyone has filling up the car. You get it. So that part is not good. It's kind of a downside, but the real purpose of this table is to kind of just show the sort of average daily use for oil. So that's really what it comes down to. If you want to kind of make some of these calculations for yourself, you need to know about how much you'll use per day. And the oil guy told me one time there's a rating on the nozzle that sprays diesel into the furnace. And it's basically, I think the math is like every 10 minutes it runs, or every 60 minutes it runs is like a gallon of oil that it consumes, and that nozzle controls the flow rate. So I don't know if you know your furnace well enough, but you can maybe calculate, from there as well. But this is the data I gathered just for a short period of time, 2011, 12, and then 16, 17, 18, for oil use. January is definitely a pretty heavy use month, in February as well. But of course, that number is diluted since it's all the way to the end of the season, inclusive of March. But yeah, this is just a reference, really. Here's also, we got the heat pump installed in 2018, and immediately I did a year-over-year comparison of, hey, just how much can I save if I use the heat pump a little bit more in the winter and the oil furnace a little bit less. So this was before wood even was introduced into the equation. And if you run through all these numbers here, and I sort of averaged out the price per gallon, even though it changed year over year, and I leveled out because the number of days billed was a little bit different, and temperature was close, but a little colder in 2018. But I still said I can probably save like $2.44 a day in these kinds of temperatures if I use the heat pump instead of the furnace. And now in much colder temperatures, different story, and I'll talk about that later, because the heat pump becomes much less desirable once the temperatures get into like the cold, like January time frame. So here's the first good chart. This is electric and oil usage, inclusive of maintenance costs. As well, so that skews the numbers a little bit. But I'll show gallons of use later on the oil to give a little better idea of straight oil use. So you can kind of see over time the electric costs have stayed pretty flat, which is kind of weird because I'm using the furnace or the heat pump a lot more now. But a lot of that has to do with electric cost going down slightly. That's one reason for it. Here you can see also just the huge tank and the money I've spent on oil since 2013. Like $1,700 down to under $400, and that's due to the heat pump and the wood stove. So huge savings there. But we'll talk about gallons of use here in a moment. Okay, so the next tab here, this really breaks it down. This is showing electric use for every month. And the cost, I have that captured here as well, of every year 2013 up to current 2022. You see I have some highlights there as far as when we got the deep freezer, and when I switched out all the LEDs. Really not much impact to those two events, but I wanted to note them just in case. And then I've got the COVID time period here as well, which I'm sure is skewing the numbers some because we were home more often during those periods of time. But one thing you will notice, and by the way, this is heating, cooling, all use, all month, all year long, just to clarify. So you'll see my overall electric costs continue to go down, even with increased heat pump usage. And again, a lot of that has to do with the rate of electricity going down slightly. That's a big factor. But even if you look at the like summer, for example, summer use. So obviously in the winter, I'm using a little bit more because of the heat pump being in use. But if you look at the May through September air conditioning use, that's generally trending in a downward direction, slightly. So the new unit is obviously more efficient than my old unit. So that's really kind of what's being captured there. And one thing I'll note, if you are watching this video right when it is published in February, you might say, hey, you're publishing it before the month is over. Well, the electric month of February ends on the 19th. So, this data is, complete for that purpose. And I have shifted all this data too. So everything's aligned with the actual month of use, not the billing month, which is 1 month in the rear. So for anyone who is wondering just how crazy I am, that's just how crazy I am. All right, so this is the big one right here. This is the table and the chart that you're going to want to just pause the video, take some time, digest. So this is the heating month usage. And this is sort of a duplicate showing the downward trend. And this is heat, like on the oil chart here. This is oil only. Um, so this is showing the downward trend in oil use. And here's where I've added in gallons. You can see I started out in 2013 to 2014 using 442 gallons in that heating season, down to this year only using 64. And I'm projecting obviously a little bit. I might, use the furnace a day or two in toward the end of February and into March. So I've added a couple days to that. So these numbers could actually go down a little bit once that transpires. But, the data is still pretty compelling as far as the reduced use. And that's, again, directly due to increased heat pump use and increased wood use. So a couple things I want to highlight here. Check out 2013 to 14, so column B, and column C down in the total oil gallons, 442 to 492. Look at that versus the average temperature that I pulled off Weather Underground. So check that out. The average temperature during these November, December, January, February timeframe went from 36 in 2013-14 winter to 34.9, but my heating, as far as gallons used for oil back then, went up 50 gallons, right? So at, $4 a gallon, that's $200 that would go up. But you can see my actual price went down because the price of oil went down in 2014 and 15. So that's kind of a neat little, I think, example of, the fluctuation in oil price. And frankly, that's an area where, wood could, fill that gap as well and help, cut your oil usage down. But the takeaway point there is that a small degree Fahrenheit drop in average temperature for a month, or really just like several days of really, really cold, can really increase your oil usage for that month. It's a pretty drastic change. So anyway, so just pointing that out. So, and then you can see starting in 2015, row 22, the temperature really has been quite a bit higher overall. So that obviously has contributed as well to the decrease in oil use. So, on a much colder winter, yeah, maybe the oil use would go up a little bit more, were it not for the wood stove. So on these really cold nights, I can use the wood stove and it'll last pretty much, I don't know, it's like 3:30 in the morning, maybe 4, till the temperature starts to dip. And then eventually the oil, the furnace and or heat pump will kick on. So, even in these, colder future winters, my plan really is just to burn more wood. So looking at row 16 here, you can kind of see how much wood I have burned. These are estimates. It's kind of hard to measure exactly how much wood you've burned. And the 1.5 shown for this season is a projection over the next couple of weeks that I'll use a little bit more than I have already. So I really haven't used that much wood. So anyway, that's a good way of looking at it. And I think for comparison purposes, if you want to look at this and say, well, can I save money in reduced oil usage by using wood? The answer is yes, unless maybe you're buying cord wood, right? If you have to buy 2 cords of wood at say just $250 a cord, so that's $500. $500 in wood, add that to 312 in oil, because let's say it's not totally replacing. I mean, you're starting to get into the realm of, or in the area of oil usage there. So wood might not be worth it for you if you've got to pay that price per cord versus just paying the oil price. Overall, I don't know. I'm kind of wrestling with this. I think I'm trying to convince myself as I'm doing the video here, but it's really up to you. It's kind of personal preference. I think oil is really convenient, really warm. It's a really nice thing to have in your home if you want to feel nice and toasty. But I like the wood stove. I like just the whole everything associated with it. I just really, really enjoy. So then the last thing we're going to show here is I'm going to show just a very small capture in time. And this is from January 2022. And this is an interesting chart to show temperature, outside average temperature versus my usage. So on this day one here, you can see I only had the furnace on. So the heat pump, wood stove completely off, and I still used $3.57 worth of electricity that day. And I did confirm that was not a laundry day either, which skews these numbers. But then on day two here, I used the wood stove all day, and then a little bit of supplement with the heat pump here and there. And you can see that heat pump bumped my electric usage up just a little bit. And then it sort of warmed up those next couple of days just a little bit. I ended up using the wood stove really only in the evening when the temps dipped, and the heat pump through the daytime. And there you can see the electric costs for those days went up to $5.36 and $5.44. So what I'm really illustrating here is that selectively using the heat pump cost a couple bucks, but in the right temperatures, it's totally worth it versus manning the wood stove all day long, especially, like for me while I'm working. And then this other graph here, and this is the last one, is going to show electric use and temperatures from January of 2021 through January of 2022, and the different electric use sources that I have, including the pool pump in the summertime and air conditioning, of course. But you can see, heat pump and wood in January of 2021, and I used up $98, worth of oil. And same thing this year, and I used $107 worth of oil. So it's a pretty consistent number, January to January, as far as all use, electric, the amount of wood, and the amount of oil that were used. So very, very, consistent. December is an interesting month. Look at the average temperature in December of 2021, 45, and I used $191 worth of electricity. Honestly, a lot of that's because I got lazy and didn't use the wood stove, but it was just, the heat pump was just so darn convenient at those temperatures. I just decided I just didn't use the wood stove that much. That's just, we didn't get a bunch of cold nights, and that's just how it went. And I ended up using zero oil during that period of time too, right? December, zero use of the furnace. So hopefully that gives you kind of a decent comparison of these different heating methods. Again, I think each of them have their place. I know it's not ideal for every person to go out and install each of these in your house. So this is really more if you've got one or the other as far as a heat pump or oil, and you're thinking about a wood stove. I think this data gives you what you would need to make a decision. So I hope this helps. As always, post in the comments if you have any questions, and I will respond. Or if you want to see more data, I've got a lot more data. And I'd be happy to share if needed. This is most of it, though. This is the bulk of it. So thanks for watching, and I will catch you guys on the next one.